couple of weeks ago I needed to run an errand in the car. I live in a market town and the main road through that town is typically a very busy one. Now, way up ahead of me, about 60 yards in front, there was a double-decker bus. And as double-decker buses have a nasty habit of doing, it stopped at a bus stop to allow passengers to get on and off. This particular bus stop was opposite the entrance to a car park. Not a busy car park, it's just an area where local residents park during the evenings. And of course, because it's an entrance to a car park, there were no cars parked on the road in front of it. It was clear. But from the edge of that entrance on the opposite side of the road, not my side of the road, the other side of the road, the oncoming lane, there were a multitude of cars parked up, local residents' cars parked in front of the houses. Now, there was a lot of traffic coming from the opposite direction and there was a fair bit of traffic behind me, but I immediately identified that if I continued and then stopped directly behind the bus, I would block the progress of traffic coming from the opposite direction, so the whole road would be gridlocked for as long as that bus was waiting there. So I stopped just short of where the parked cars started. Either way, traffic travelling in the same direction as me wouldn't be able to progress as long as that bus was there. So I figured the sensible thing to do, my actions, would at least allow traffic from the opposite direction to continue to progress along the main road, preventing a gridlock situation. It wasn't hurting anybody. Now, it didn't take long before the guy that had pulled up behind me started to play up. I drive a Mini Clubman, he was in one of those tall Mitsubishi four-wheel drives, so he could see over the top of the car and he could see the situation ahead of us. At first, he just gave me a couple of short blasts from his horn, his way of telling me that I was holding him up and I needed to move on. But I ignored him. Then he tried the moving forward and pulling up right behind me technique, almost touching my car, in an attempt to intimidate me and get me to move on. But I ignored him. Then he pressed the horn and leaned on it for what seemed like an eternity. It was probably only 2 or 3 seconds, but you know the sort of thing. And this continued until the bus finally started to move and I followed on. In reality, this entire sort of episode probably only lasted about 20 seconds. I was only sitting there for 20 seconds, 30 seconds at the most. But that was enough, that was all it took for this guy to work himself up into what was an aggressive state. All because he wanted to move on another 50 or 60 yards before pulling to a halt and then having to wait for the bus. Something he was going to have to do in any event. Now, as we continued along the road, he continued to drive really close to the back of my car. It felt like it was only inches away. He'd make 1 or 2 pathetic attempts to overtake me, but that was dashed by oncoming traffic, and he had to pull back in again. Eventually, we got onto the dual carriageway, and he slowly pulled up at side of me, something I was fully expecting. I knew what was coming, the usual shouting and swearing at me, accompanied by rude hand gestures, so I calmly and slowly turned my head towards him. I'm not entirely sure what he was expecting, who he was expecting to be driving my car, but he certainly wasn't expecting a well-built, burly biker, 6 feet tall, wearing a beard you could lose a badger in, and a particularly severe Paddington Bear stare. Within a nanosecond of our eyes meeting, the aggressive look on his face turned to a look of subdued panic. His face turned away from me, he put his foot hard down and sped off into the distance. And this brought to mind, back in my dim and distant memory, a lecture that I'd attended at police training school. Road traffic law and motor vehicle accidents obviously played a huge part in my training. How to deal with accidents, how to record accidents, how to record accident statistics, how to investigate accidents to find out what the cause of the accident would be and who was at fault. It was actually a huge subject covered by numerous lectures, but there was one particular lecture that has always stuck in my mind. Now, the guy conducting the lecture was a guy called Sergeant Frith. Sergeant Frith was a gent. He was what I would describe as one of the old school. He'd spent many years as a traffic sergeant, and I believe he'd also worked in the accident stats office. He was well into his 60s, and I reckon approaching compulsory retirement age, which is why he'd ended up at the training school. I'll never forget it. He started the lecture with a question, and that question was, what do you think is the number one cause of accidents and deaths in the UK? Now, of course, we all started to put our hands up and try to answer this question. Bald tyres, travelling too fast, drink driving, you name it, we came up with every logical answer we could think of for that question. Until we reached the point where we were just running out of ideas. And then he stopped us and he said this, "You're all right, but at the same time, you're all wrong." He said, "Those answers that you've given me are all contributing factors as to why accidents occur." But he said the number one contributor to all these factors, the common denominator, if you like, that brings them together, is what he referred to as the beta male complex. Now, I'm sure Sergeant Frith wasn't just making this up. He was teaching a curriculum for young probationary police officers so that they could acquire the tools necessary to do the job. It was a long time ago and I can't remember every single aspect of that lecture, but what stuck in my mind was this. In the context of driving behaviour, an alpha male and a true beta male have very similar driving personalities. Either consciously or subconsciously, they know their position in life. They're happy with that position, they're comfortable with it, and so they don't feel that they have anything to prove. Their driving characteristics are calm and calculated. They're polite and considerate towards other road users. They also know the limits of their driving skills and they stay within those limits. They don't take unnecessary risks. Now, someone who has a beta male complex is a completely different animal. And perversely, it can occur in women as well as men. It's just more dominant in men. These people occupy the lower percentages of beta maledom, if you like. They are acutely aware of their lower beta male status. And there are slightly narcissistic elements to the personalities. These people aspire to be alpha males. And this aspiration, if you like, dominates their personalities. The only problem is they've got absolutely no chance of reaching the goals because they've got absolutely no idea how an alpha male works. Now, these people show their presence to us in all walks of life. They'll stick out in the workplace or in a circle of friends. They usually come over as very loud extrovert people. People that get your attention because that is what they do. They're constantly trying to get everyone's attention. They're trying to prove their imagined status to everyone around them. Internet trolls are probably a prime example. Now, these people make their presence felt on the road just as much as they do in any other walk of life. The guy that speeds past you on the road, weaving in and out of traffic. The impatient driver that jumps the lights or fails to give way at a junction because his time is more important than everyone else, is trying to show everyone that he's an alpha male. Now, up to this point, I've spoken about this aspect of personalities with driving in general, but motorcycles, by virtue of modern culture, the way they've been portrayed over the years in cinema and on TV, attract more than the fair share of beta male complex sufferers, for want of a better word, because they see riding a motorcycle as an alpha male pastime. So they gravitate towards bikes because they believe it will give them an edge in achieving what it is they want to achieve. And if you've ever ridden with a group of people, you will have met or encountered one of these types. He's the guy that chooses the most impressive bike with the highest performance in the group and constantly tells you about it. He's the guy who also self-appoints himself to be leader of the pack. and you'll never see him riding as tail gunner. Now, there's a time and a place for opening your bike up a little bit and perhaps being a little bit naughty, but this guy does it all the time. He has no consideration for other road users or the people that are riding in his group. He'll turn the ride into a competition because he's constantly trying to prove himself. He'll overtake other vehicles when it's not safe to do so. He'll take unnecessary risks to get further ahead of everyone else. Now, effectively, what he's doing is laying down a pseudo challenge to the other riders in his group in order to elevate his imagined status. Now, the fact is, he's got an unfair advantage because he already started well ahead of everyone else. And he also knows that in an average traffic situation, the further back in the group you are, the harder it's going to be to make that ground up. What he's actually doing is all artificial, it's pretend, but he thinks that it's elevating his status in the group. Now, a true leader, if you like, an alpha male, rides in a manner that holds the group together. It keeps them united. He'll ride at a pace that the slowest member of the group is comfortable with. But the beta male complex rider, he fragments the group. He turns an enjoyable ride out into an ordeal for some of the riders towards the back of the group. And statistically, this is where the danger creeps in, where motorcyclists riding in groups are concerned. For the guy at the front, when it comes to making manoeuvres to overtake, he can pick and choose his moment, because really he knows there's absolutely no pressure on him. I've seen this happen, and I've dealt with accidents where it's happened. The guys towards the back are in a different position. Quite often they haven't chosen the route. They may be in unfamiliar surroundings. They'll often find themselves trapped in a situation where there's an endless stream of traffic coming the opposite way and there's no opportunity for them to get out and overtake the vehicle in front of them. Meanwhile, the lead rider or the lead riders have gone out of sight. This rider doesn't fully know the route, he doesn't know if they're going to turn off ahead where he can't see them, and basically he's left with three choices. He can continue riding safely in the hope that they might stop and wait for him, or he'll eventually catch up to them. He can turn around, just continue on his own ride and take the long way home. There's nothing wrong with that, I've done that. Or he can throw caution to the wind, start taking unnecessary risks in an effort to catch up with the rest of the group. And that's usually where the tragedy occurs. Now, I reckon at this moment there are a lot of people watching this video for whom the penny has suddenly dropped, because they've been on the receiving end of this behaviour. You don't find yourself in this position because you're a bad rider or a slow rider. You find yourself in this position because of someone else's selfishness. The beta male complex in this scenario is a type of inferiority complex that's projected onto other people. And I'm not making this video to tell you what to do, only you know what is the right thing to do. I just wanted to make people aware of why this situation occurs, which hopefully might be a valuable tool in guiding you on how you should deal with it. Riding in groups of friends can be a wonderful thing, but don't let certain individuals spoil it for you. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. If you have, I would be really grateful if you would hit the like button and subscribe. I'll be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.